If you've been feeling overwhelmed by money lately, I just want you to take a breath for a second, because you're not alone. In 2026, I think a lot of people are carrying financial stress like background noise, not loud enough to talk about every day, but loud enough to make it hard to relax. And the strange part is, we have more information than ever, more apps, more advice, more experts, more strategies, and yet, less peace. So today, I want to try something different. This is slow content. No panic, no hype, no, do this or you'll be broke forever. Just a quiet story about the calmest person I've ever known when it came to money. My Gran Betty. And I'm going to share the habits she lived by. Habits that feel like the antidote to modern financial anxiety. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll give you a simple 1-hour challenge you can try this week that will genuinely change the way you feel about money. Now, before we begin, if you enjoy videos that feel like a warm cup of tea for your nervous system, especially around money, mindset, and living well in a noisy world, I'd love it if you'd tap like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who's been feeling financially overwhelmed. It helps the channel more than you'd think, and it tells the algorithm, yes, more calm please. Alright, let's start here. Have you ever opened your phone just to check one thing, and somehow ended up feeling like you're failing at life? Not because someone insulted you, not because you got bad news, but because you saw someone else's life. Someone buying a house, someone traveling, someone investing, someone starting a business, someone doing a 30-day glow-up, someone telling you that if you don't have passive income by 30 you're doomed. And then you look at your bank account, and suddenly you feel behind. Not because you're actually doing badly, but because modern life is designed to make you feel behind. And the financial advice doesn't help, because it's loud. One person says, invest aggressively. Another says, pay off all debt first. Someone else says, buy property immediately. Another says, never buy property. Then someone tells you the only way to succeed is to wake up at 5 a.m., drink mushroom coffee, and start 3 side hustles. It's exhausting. And after a while, money stops feeling like a tool. It starts feeling like an emotional emergency. So I want to tell you about Gran Betty. Because she lived through hard times. Real hard times. And yet she had something I've never seen from any finance influencer, any budgeting app, any motivational speaker, anyone. She had peace. Not because she had loads of money, she didn't. But she had calm. And the reason her habits matter now is because our world has become financially overstimulating. Everything is a subscription. Everything is an upgrade. Everything is limited edition. Everything is buy now, pay later. Everything is trying to make you feel like you're missing out. Gran Betty simply refused. She didn't fight the world. She didn't rant about it. She just quietly opted out. And she did it with habits that sound almost too simple, until you try them. Gran Betty had a sentence she lived by. She said it once, casually, while making tea. And I remember it so clearly because it hit me like a brick. If you don't decide what your money is for, the world will decide for you. And if you think about it, that's the whole problem, isn't it? Because in 2026 the world has opinions. Your phone has opinions. Ads have opinions. Your friends have opinions. Your family has opinions. Algorithms have opinions. And if you don't choose your own definition of enough, you'll spend your entire life trying to catch up to someone else's. Gran Betty didn't chase. She chose. And that's what made her wealthy. Not in pounds. In peace. So I want to walk you through her Zen money habits. And I'm going to do it slowly, like we're sat at her kitchen table. Because that's where most of these lessons happened. All right. The first habit is the foundation of everything else. Gran Betty practiced what I call financial silence. Not ignorance, not denial. silence. She deliberately turned down the volume of everyone else's expectations. And in that quiet, she could hear her real needs. I used to watch her at her kitchen table. She didn't have a laptop open. She didn't have 10 apps. She didn't have charts. She had a small notebook, a pen that barely worked, and a cup of tea. And she'd sit there with this calm face like, well, let's see what's going on. No shame, no spiraling, no fear, just clarity. And here's the thing, most people don't avoid their money because they're irresponsible. They avoid it because it triggers anxiety. It triggers shame. It triggers that feeling of, I should be doing better. Gran Betty didn't have that, because she treated money like weather, not like a moral score. She'd look at her numbers the way you look outside and go, right, it's raining, so we'll bring a coat. That's it. No drama, no identity crisis. And her financial silence wasn't just about checking numbers, it was about protecting her mind. Gran Betty didn't consume endless financial advice. She didn't watch people scream about the stock market. She didn't doom-scroll recession content. She didn't compare. She didn't let money content live in her brain rent-free. And I know that sounds obvious. But in 2026, that's almost radical. Because financial anxiety isn't just about what you earn, it's about what you absorb. Now, out of that silence came her second habit. This one is one of my favorites. She didn't budget for survival. She budgeted for joy. Gran Betty had what she called her budget of joy. And the name alone is a lesson. Because most people hear the word budget and feel like they're about to be punished. Gran Betty heard the word budget and felt safe. Because to her, a budget wasn't a cage, it was a promise that her money would go toward what actually mattered. And she had this little notebook, and inside it, she kept something I've never seen in any modern finance book. A gratitude ledger. She didn't just track what she spent. She tracked what the spending gave her. Not dopamine. Not a quick hit. Real contentment. I remember one page where she wrote something like, jam, $3.50, shared with Margaret, felt rich. And I remember laughing because that's not how you're supposed to think about money, is it? But she was right. Because Gran Betty understood something the modern world tries to make you forget. Wealth is not just what you have. Wealth is what you feel. And you can have a lot of money and feel constantly deprived. Or you can have modest money and feel deeply satisfied. Gran Betty spent with intention. And that intention protected her from the biggest modern spending trap. Buying things to manage emotions. Because let's be honest, a lot of impulsive spending isn't about the item. It's about relief. Relief from boredom. Relief from loneliness. Relief from insecurity. Relief from stress. Relief from feeling like you're falling behind. Gran Betty could feel that urge coming, and she'd pause. Not with harsh discipline. With gentleness. She had a rule. If a purchase didn't add peace to her home, it didn't belong there. And that rule is so simple. But it's unbelievably powerful. Because it makes you ask a different question. Not, can I afford this? But, will this make my life calmer? And the reason that matters is because your home is either a sanctuary, or it's a showroom you're paying for. And so many people in 2026 are quietly broke for a reason nobody talks about. They're paying to look okay. Gran Betty didn't. Now, the third habit, this one is almost extinct, patience. Gran Betty believed in the sweetness of the wait. And I know that sounds like something you'd find embroidered on a cushion. But she lived it. If she wanted something, like a winter coat, she didn't buy it instantly. She didn't buy it on credit. She didn't buy it because she was stressed and needed a dopamine hit. She saved for it slowly. £2.20 a week. Into a ceramic jar. And here's what most people miss. She wasn't saving for the coat. She was saving for self-trust. Because every week she put money in that jar. She was proving to herself, I can want something and still be okay. and that is emotional wealth. Because in 2026, modern spending is designed to bypass your patience. One click, one tap, one buy now, one pay in 3, one hit of relief, and every time you buy something instantly, you train your brain to believe, I cannot tolerate wanting. Gran Betty trained her brain to believe, I can want something and still feel safe. She called it patience as a dividend. Because while you wait for the thing, you gain something: discipline, self-respect, confidence, calm, and that calm is priceless. Now the fourth habit is where Gran Betty becomes genuinely modern. Even though she lived in a simpler time, Gran Betty was resourceful, and she had what I call community currency. The kind of wealth you can't download. She traded, she shared, she fixed. She knew her neighbors, she knew who had tools, she knew who could sew, she knew who could help. If something broke, her first thought wasn't, replace it. Her first thought was, can this be fixed? And she used to say, fixing is a form of freedom. And she was right, because in a world of endless replacements, the ability to repair is a superpower. The ability to barter is a superpower. The ability to ask for help is a superpower. And let me say something gently. A lot of people aren't financially fragile because they're irresponsible. They're financially fragile because they're isolated. Gran Betty built resilience through people. And in 2026, that might be the most underrated financial strategy of all. Now, her fifth habit. This one is my favorite because it feels rebellious. Gran Betty invested in intrinsic value, while the world obsessed over market fluctuations. Gran invested in well-being. She prioritized experiences. She'd spend £12.80 on a train ticket for a day trip to the coast. And she'd come home glowing. And she didn't need to post it. She didn't need to prove it. She didn't need to turn it into content. She just enjoyed it. And she understood something so many people forget. Stuff doesn't age well. Memories do. And she had this tiny habit that I think everyone should steal immediately. She had a kindness fund. Just £10 a month. Not for emergencies. Not for bills. For kindness. A bunch of flowers. A small gift. A surprise for someone who was struggling. And you might think, that's sweet. But it's more than sweet. It's financially powerful. Because it proves you're not living in fear. It proves you're living in ownership. It means you can look at money and say, you work for me. Not the other way around. Now, this next part is the one that always gets me. Because it proves Gran Betty understood the real point of money. As she got older, she started writing what she called legacy letters. She attached small handwritten notes to her most treasured possessions. A clock, a ring, an old wooden stool. But the note wasn't about resale value. It wasn't about price. It wasn't about pounds. It was about meaning. What the clock had witnessed. What the ring had survived. Who sat on the stool? What conversations happened in that room? And she was doing something quietly radical. She was building a legacy of contentment. So the next generation didn't just inherit objects. They inherited the wisdom of knowing how much is enough. And in a world where people inherit money but still feel empty, that wisdom is priceless. Now I want to pause here for a second, because if you're still listening, I want you to know something. This video isn't about becoming perfect. It's not about becoming some hyper-disciplined minimalist who never spends a penny. Gran Betty wasn't like that. She enjoyed life. She loved little treats. She loved giving gifts. She loved the simple pleasures. But she didn't buy things to soothe anxiety. She didn't spend to impress. She didn't spend to keep up. She spent to support peace. And that's the difference. Now, if this is resonating with you so far, this is your gentle reminder to hit like. It really helps me make more videos like this. And if you want more slow content storytelling around money, calm living, and modern life, subscribe. You'll be very welcome here. Alright, so how do we take Gran Betty's Zen habits and actually use them? Not as nostalgia, not as a cute story, but as a real strategy. Here's where it begins. 1 hour. This week. 1 hour of financial silence. No scrolling, no influencer advice, no shame, no panic. Just you, your numbers, and one question. What would make my life feel more peaceful? Not richer, not more impressive, more peaceful. Because the world will tell you to chase a bigger life. Gran Betty would tell you to build a calmer one. Now, if you want a simple way to do this, here's a little Gran Betty style method. Take a notebook. Yes, a real notebook. And write down 3 things. What drains my money? What drains my peace? What drains both? Because some things cost money but give you peace. And those are often worth it. And some things cost money and drain your peace. And those are the ones quietly ruining your life. Then look around your home and ask yourself, is this a sanctuary? Or is this a showroom? What in your space makes you breathe easier? What in your space makes you feel heavier? Because clutter isn't just physical, it's financial, it's emotional. And then, do one more thing. Pick one expense you can pause for 7 days. Not forever. Just 7 days. A subscription, a takeaway habit, a little treat that's turned into a default. Pause it. And notice what happens. Do you feel anxious? Restless? Bored? That's not weakness. That's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of freedom. Because when you learn what you're actually spending to avoid, you start to heal the real problem. And when you heal the real problem, money becomes easier. Not because you suddenly earn more, but because you're not leaking peace. Now I want to leave you with one final thought. Gran Betty didn't have modern advantages. No investing apps, no online banking, no high-interest savings accounts, no personal finance podcasts. But she had something we've lost. She had enoughness. And enoughness is a skill, it's a muscle, it's a practice. And you can rebuild it. Even now. Even in 2026. Even in a world that's constantly trying to convince you you need more. So here's my invitation to you. Try Gran Betty's 1 hour financial silence this week, and if you do, come back and tell me what you noticed. Did it feel calming? Did it feel uncomfortable? Did you realize you were spending money to soothe something? Did you find one expense that you're ready to pause? I genuinely love to hear it. And if you have your own Gran Betty wisdom, something a parent, grandparent, or older friend taught you about money, drop it in the comments. Let's make the comments section a little library of calm. And if you enjoyed this slow content style video, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's been feeling financially overwhelmed. Because I really believe this kind of calm, mindful money is contagious. And the world could use more of it. The world will always be loud. But your life doesn't have to be. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.